So we're talking with Mannie Ken, who is on the right, and Ken Lovett, who is on the left. How old are you both?
I'm 88, almost 89 next month.
And I'm 92, 93 in a fortnight.
Okay, so you both live here in Melbourne in Australia. What I'd like to know is, how did you meet and how old were you at the time?
Well, we met in Sydney, because that's where we both lived in those days, which was back in 1988.
And what were the circumstances under which you met?
Well, I was just in the process of coming out at the age of 61.
Yes.
And I went to my first gay demo, which was against Margaret Thatcher's Clause 28, which had caused great outcry in the UK and elsewhere. So I thought, well, have I got enough courage to go to a gay demo? But I went, and there was a group there who were running the whole process, and they were called Gay Solidarity. And when I was at that demo, which was, I think, late afternoon, and it had been on most of the day, I was told about this group called Gay Solidarity, and they told me they had meetings on a regular basis at the homes of various members. And the next one was going to be at the home of Sister Mary Quite Contrary in Randwick. And would I like to go? So I plucked up courage. That was also in April 88, I think, or thereabouts, and went to the meeting. And at the meeting there were a whole lot of other members of Gay Solidarity, at which there was one older person who saw me coming in and thought to himself,
somebody around my own age.
Yes, yes. And was it love at first sight?
Oh, it took 5 years.
So what happened during those 5 years?
Well, Ken lived in Woolloomooloo and I lived in Belmore.
Which are in Sydney?
Yes.
They're both in Sydney, yes. So we were not close to each other in residence area. Ken did a lot of socialising in his house at Woolloomooloo, and also with the people he was involved with Gay Solidarity. And for 5 years we used to go to demos and go to meetings, and we'd meet at meetings, and after the meetings or after demos we'd go and have coffee together or whatever. And that was all.
We were very busy in those days.
How old were you, Ken?
Well, I can't remember.
Well, if I was 61, he was 4 years older than me.
Okay, so 65.
Yeah.
But you're looking very good for 92, I must say.
Well, I suppose I can thank him for some of that.
Oh, and vice versa, if I may say so.
So after 5 years, what happened then?
Well, one Ken had some tickets for a show at the Belvoir Street Theatre, a play, and we went to see it this particular night, and he said to me, well, you can't go home to Belmore by train now, it's a bit sort of like dangerous. Why don't you come and spend the night in Woolloomooloo? And the rest, as they say, is sort of like history. That was 22 years ago.
And was it a romantic night you first spent together?
Of course. I should point out, though, that during the whole period from way back, from 1978, that was when Gay Solidarity was formed, and I was involved from very much the beginning of that, which was the start of the
the first Mardi Gras.
Mardi Gras in Sydney. And
so this would have been in the late 70s?
Yes, 78. And I wasn't around, as it were. I had arrived in Australia from South Africa, but I was a married man with 3 children, so there was no way I was going to go to anything like that or get involved. I mean, what gay work, what gay liaisons I had were very secret and hidden from everybody, including me, in a sense.
So you were living separately from each other?
Oh, yes, yes. We got together when we could, or at weekends or whatever. But from 93 to 94, when Ken retired, and then he bought the house in Newcastle, and that was in mid to late 94. And so he moved out of Woolloomooloo and into Newcastle, and we commuted backwards and forwards at weekends. So he got involved with people in Newcastle with ACON and
which is the AIDS Council of New South Wales.
Council, yes.
Yes.
And he was involved with making quilts there and caring for people with AIDS, and going to John Hunter Hospital where there was an AIDS ward and that sort of thing. And I was doing AIDS caring in Sydney, and I was also doing Meals on Wheels.
So we had full-time work, unpaid work.
So you, when did you guys actually move in together?
In 19...
We came down to Melbourne on holiday in September 2000 because the Olympic Games were on up north in Sydney and Newcastle, and there was great disruption there. So we came to Melbourne to get away from it all. At the same time, there was a big demo here in Melbourne, which had to do, it was called S13, and all the financial or whatever, with all the countries involving Australia and America and everything, they were having a big do down at Crown Casino or something. And so we came down, we were staying in the flat of Graham Willett in Fairfield. Graham Willett was actually the first gay guy I came out to in Sydney in 1987. Anyway, we were staying in his flat. He was a friend of both of ours, and we saw an advert for this house in Melbourne. And Gary Janes, being what Gary was, who was very interested in all sorts of housing and properties and things, brought us to have a look at it. And a month later we came down for the auction and bought it. So we moved down here at the beginning of 2001. I would have been 73, 74, and Ken would have been 78.
Okay, so you moved in together at quite a late age.
Oh, absolutely.
How did you find it living together?
Well,
we had too much of everything.
Oh, that was our furniture and our belongings, yes. But the thing is that we'd already had weekends in Sydney or Newcastle, which were 4 or 5 days at a weekend. So it wasn't new to us to be living together, but this was going to be on a full-time basis. So we weren't quite sure how that would work out.
But it worked out quite well.
You got involved with gay and lesbian activism here in Melbourne. What were you doing?
Well, actually, we were running lesbian gay solidarity down here.
Well, as far as we could. And intersection, which was also for ageing and councils and homophobia amongst all of that lot. And so we first of all, our web pages, we built up what we could with the web pages, but then, you know, we went to demos and things with our banner with lesbian and gay solidarity. So we did what we could in activism till we couldn't anymore. It was just we were getting too old and too worn out.
I mean, there were plenty of what would you say? Well, plenty of political things that we could get involved with down here, as we were still involved in Newcastle and Sydney.
And don't forget, in Sydney there was our Sydney Park AIDS Memorial Groves project, which was still going on when we were down here. So we would go up once, twice, 3 times a year from here at the beginning. Then it became once a year. And until 2 or 3 years ago, we just couldn't anymore, and they said to us the park was full. But talking about down here, Fairfield infectious diseases hospital, which Ken had closed at the end of 99 or whatever.
Kennett was the Victorian Premier at
yes.
the time, yes.
And it was closed for many years, and then we saw articles here which were in the local papers saying what a terrible state the AIDS garden at Fairfield was. And Ken and I sort of took up the cause on that, and we went to town on it, as it were. We were interviewed by 3CR, we were interviewed by Joy Radio, all sorts of people that interviewed us as we developed redevelopment of that, as North Melbourne Institute of Technology took over the campus which had been Fairfield Hospital, and then we eventually got them to develop the AIDS garden again, or to rehabilitate it.
What challenges do you face as two elderly gay men living together?
I think the challenge, as far as we're concerned, is living together. The challenges...
Living together and getting old, I think,
Yes.
and getting illnesses that we didn't bargain for.
Mm-hmm.
And living the life we were living, which has been limited now by our physical activities. We can't do what we used to do. So we don't anymore. So both of us are busy on the computers. I'm still doing our web pages and putting as much of lesbian and gay solidarity stuff on there as we go on. I've got my own web pages as well. Ken still does submissions to the government. He's in contact with all sorts of people that he makes the submissions to, and those are the sort of things that are our day-to-day activities. But you've got to run a household. We don't have any help other than our friend Gary, who does help us twice a week with a car. But we don't have a car, so the tram is up there. We walk. Our walking is restricted these days. We can't walk as much as we used to. And so that's the sort of life we live now. It's restricted by our ability physically.
Which means that we can no longer go on long walks or demonstrations
Yeah, we can't do that anymore.
on political matters.
May I ask a very naughty question?
Absolutely.
Do you have a good sex life?
That diminishes with age. Whatever you like to think about sex and the elderly,
Yes.
as you get older, your ability gets less. Never mind the Viagra and all of that crap, which we've never gone in for. It just diminishes until you can't anymore. That's virtually what happens.
So it's more of a companionship
Absolutely.
and a romantic relationship.
Not so much of the romance, thank you.
Well, we're still in love. We still have our affection that doesn't diminish. The main thing I must stress for you is that both of us are lucky in that we haven't got dementia, and we haven't got any sign of dementia as we approach our... He's already into his 90s, I'm getting pretty close, and we're terribly lucky that we've still got our minds.
Well, we still like entertaining anyhow.
Oh yeah, we like to see our friends and
we
whatever.
have lots of friends who regularly turn up here.
Do you hope that you can go into a nursing home together?
No,
No,
we are hoping that we can't go into a nursing home at all, but that we can stay here till the end.
Yes, yeah. Have you got any message for people watching this?
You do your best to stay at home. Keep your minds active and keep your bodies active. Don't sit down on your bottoms and do nothing. Make sure that you keep yourselves active at all times.
I just say enjoy yourself.
And do your best not to confine yourself just to sitting at home, doing nothing. Go out and about as long as you are physically and mentally able to do
Well,
so.
just keep active.
Yeah.
Okay. Ken Lovett and Mannie Ken, thank you very much.
Thank you as well.